r/no sleep. Posted by you/redline survivor 6 hours ago. My friends and I found an underground go-kart track. The race hasn't ended for all of us. I'm writing this because I need a record. I've already given my statement to the police, and I can tell by the way the detective looked at me, that pitying, this guy's in shock and hallucinating look, that they aren't going to do anything. They're treating it as a tragic accident involving urban exploration and structural collapse. But I know what I drove, and I know what chased us. If you live in the Rust Belt, you know the kind of industrial decay I'm talking about. Massive skeletal warehouses that span entire city blocks, windows shattered like jagged teeth, parking lots reclaiming their territory with weeds and cracked asphalt. It's where my buddy Tyler loved to go. He was an adrenaline junkie, the kind of guy who saw a condemned sign as an invitation. It was Tyler's bachelor party last weekend. He didn't want strippers or Vegas. He wanted high octane, as he put it. There were 4 of us, me, David, Tyler, Sarah, the groomswoman and Tyler's best friend since kindergarten, and Marcus. Tyler found the place on some obscure gearhead forum. It wasn't on Google Maps. It was just called The Circuit. The post promised unrestricted carts, no governors, no safety briefings, and a track layout that changed weekly. It sounded illegal as hell, which was exactly why Tyler wanted to go. We drove out at 9 p.m. The GPS took us into the deep industrial district, where the streetlights hummed with a dying orange glow, and half the bulbs were burnt out. We pulled up to a massive corrugated metal warehouse. There was no signage, just a single heavy steel door propped open with a cinder block, bleeding fluorescent light onto the wet pavement. "This looks sketchy, Ty," Sarah said, leaning forward from the back seat. "Like wake up in a bathtub without kidneys sketchy." "Relax," Tyler grinned, killing the engine. "It's underground racing. It's supposed to be gritty. That's how you know the carts are fast." We walked inside. The smell hit me first. Not just gasoline and rubber, which I expected, but something metallic and old, like ozone and stagnant water. The space was cavernous, high ceilings lost in shadow, and in the center, a chaotic track built from concrete jersey barriers and stacks of old tires. The lighting was weird, old sodium vapor lamps that gave everything a sickly yellow tint. A guy was standing behind a makeshift counter built of oil drums and plywood. He looked like he'd been dipped in 10W30 motor oil, greasy coveralls, skin smeared with grime, and eyes that seemed too bright for the dim room. "4?" he asked. His voice sounded like gravel in a blender. "Yeah, 4 for the Iron Man package," Tyler said, referencing the forum post. The guy didn't smile. He just reached under the counter and slapped a clipboard down. "Sign. Cash only. 200 a head." "Steep?" Marcus muttered. "Fast," the guy replied. We signed. I remember looking at the waiver. It wasn't the usual legal jargon. The text was dense, typed on a typewriter, the ink bleeding into the cheap paper. I skimmed it, something about waiver of liability regarding physical, psychological, and temporal displacement. I chuckled. Temporal displacement? They were really selling the extreme vibe. We handed over the cash. The guy pointed to a row of lockers. "Phones, wallets, keys. Nothing loose in the carts. You lose it on the track, it belongs to the track." We stripped our pockets. I hesitated with my phone, glancing at the signal. No service. I shoved it in the locker. The guy led us to the pit lane. The carts were absolute beasts. They weren't the plastic bumpered lawnmowers you ride at fun centers. These were stripped-down frames, exposed engines, jagged welding, and tires that looked wide enough for a Formula One car. They were painted a matte, light-absorbing gray. No numbers. "Helmets," the guy grunted, pointing to a rack. I grabbed one. It smelled of mildew and old sweat. When I pulled it on, the visor was scratched, blurring my vision slightly.
50 laps, the guy said. He was holding a remote control. Green light, you go. Red light, you stop. Do not get out of the cart unless the building is on fire. Even then, think twice. He walked over to a breaker box on the wall and flipped a switch. The engines didn't start with a pull cord. They roared to life simultaneously, triggered remotely. The sound was deafening. It vibrated in my teeth. The idle was rough, aggressive. I climbed into the third cart. The seat was hard plastic, bolted directly to the frame. There was no seat belt. I gripped the steering wheel. The rubber was tacky, sticky. Above the track, a singular traffic light hung from a chain. Red, yellow, green. Tyler shot off first, tires squealing. Marcus followed, then me, then Sarah. The first 10 laps were incredible. Tyler wasn't lying. These things were terrifyingly fast. The acceleration snapped my head back. The steering was heavy but precise. We drifted corners, inches from the concrete barriers. The world narrowed down to the yellow-tinted track and the bumper in front of me. It was pure, unadulterated flow state. Around lap 15, I noticed something odd. The track layout seemed to stretch. There was a hairpin turn I had taken 14 times. It was a tight right, followed by a short straight. But on the 15th time, the straight was longer. I floored the gas, expecting the next turn, but the concrete walls just kept going. I checked my speed. I was maxed out, the engine screaming, but the turn didn't come for a solid 10 seconds. When I finally hit the braking zone, I nearly spun out. I saw Marcus ahead of me, his helmet frantically looking left and right. By lap 20, the sodium vapor lights began to flicker out one by one. The warehouse grew darker. The only illumination came from the sparks flying off our chassis as we scraped the barriers, and a faint, bioluminescent green glow coming from the digital lap counter mounted high on the wall. 30 laps remaining. I tried to pull up next to Marcus to signal him, maybe ask if we should pit. I gunned the engine, pulling alongside. I looked over. Marcus wasn't looking at the steering wheel. He was looking at his wheel. He was screaming. I couldn't hear him over the engines, but I could see his visor fogging up with the intensity of it. He was yanking at the wheel, trying to turn into the pit lane entrance we were passing. The cart didn't turn. My stomach dropped. I tried my own brakes. The pedal went to the floor. Nothing. I let off the gas. The engine didn't decelerate. The RPM stayed pinned at the red line. We weren't driving anymore. We were passengers.
The carts accelerated. We were moving faster than should have been possible indoors. The wind was a physical weight against my chest. The walls became a gray blur. Then I heard it. It wasn't an engine sound. It was a sound like tearing metal, a high-pitched shriek that cut through the roar of our motors. I looked in my rearview mirror. There was a fifth cart. It was black, not painted black. It looked like a hole in the world. It absorbed the little light that remained. The driver was indistinguishable from the machine, a silhouette of jagged edges. And it was fast, impossibly fast. It slammed into Sarah, who was trailing in fourth. I saw her cart jump. The rear axle snapped. She spun out, hitting the concrete barrier at what must have been 50 miles an hour. "Sarah!" I screamed, the sound lost in my helmet. I expected her to bounce off, to come to a stop. But the wall didn't act like concrete. It rippled like water. Her cart and Sarah punched through the barrier and vanished into the darkness beyond the track. The digital counter on the wall blinked. 29 laps remaining. Participants, 3. Panic, cold and sharp, washed over me. This wasn't a race, it was a culling. Tyler was in the lead, driving like a man possessed. He must have seen what happened. He was taking corners with suicidal precision, clipping the barriers, sparks showering behind him. The black cart was gaining on me. I could feel the cold radiating from it. It was right on my bumper. The shriek of its presence was splitting my skull. I knew, with an instinct I didn't know I possessed, that if it touched me, I would go where Sarah went. I focused.
I stopped fighting the lack of brakes and started using the speed. I threw the cart into corners, sliding sideways, blocking the line. Every time the black cart tried to pass, I cut it off. It rammed me, jarring my spine, but I held the line. Lap 35. The track changed again. We weren't in a warehouse anymore. The ceiling was gone, replaced by a void of swirling gray mist. The concrete barriers were now rusted iron spikes. The air smelled of sulfur and burning hair. Marcus was directly in front of me. He was slowing down. His engine was sputtering. "No, no, no, move!" I yelled. The black cart surged past me on the outside, a move that defied physics, gripping the wall as if gravity was a suggestion. It lunged for Marcus. It didn't ram him. It pulled alongside him. The driver of the black cart reached out a gloved hand and touched Marcus's helmet. Marcus's cart disintegrated. It didn't explode. It just turned to ash. Marcus fell onto the track, rolling at 60 miles an hour. He tumbled, limbs flailing, and then the track surface simply opened up like a mouth and swallowed him whole. Participants, 2. Just me and Tyler.
The counter didn't show laps anymore. It just showed a countdown timer. 5 minutes. Survived for 5 minutes. My cart was vibrating so hard I thought my bones would shatter. My vision was tunneling. I looked ahead at Tyler. He was driving beautifully. He was always the best driver among us. He was creating a gap. But the black cart wasn't chasing me anymore. It had lost interest. It shot past me like a bullet, the wind buffeting my helmet. It was going for Tyler. "Tyler!" I screamed, realizing the game. It wanted the leader. It wanted the best one. Tyler saw it coming. He didn't block. He didn't swerve. He did something insane. He slammed his cart into the wall. He was trying to wreck himself, to save himself? No, he was trying to break the loop. He hit a section of the barrier that looked slightly different, a wooden section painted to look like concrete. He crashed through it, debris flying. For a second, I saw outside. I saw streetlights, real streetlights. The illusion shattered. The warehouse walls flickered back into existence. The black cart let out a sound like a dying animal and dissolved into black smoke. My cart's engine cut instantly. The brakes locked. I spun 720 degrees, sliding across the dusty concrete, coming to a halt in the center of the silent warehouse. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. I ripped my helmet off, gasping for air that tasted of dust and mold. I scrambled out of the cart. My legs were jelly. I vomited bile onto the floor. "Tyler? Sarah? Marcus?" My voice echoed. I ran to where Sarah had crashed. There was a scorch mark on the wall, shaped like a cart. No Sarah. I ran to where Marcus had vanished, a pile of gray ash, shaped vaguely like a seat. I ran to the hole Tyler had punched in the wall. The cart was there, half buried in a pile of rotting pallets outside the warehouse. The front end was crumpled like an accordion. I scrambled over the debris. "Tyler!" The seat was empty. The safety harness— wait, his cart had a harness? Mine didn't. Was cut. I stumbled back into the warehouse to find the grease-covered man. The counter was empty. The lockers were open. Our phones were sitting there in a neat pile. The carts— my cart, the one Sarah and Marcus drove— were gone. The track was covered in inches of dust, as if no one had driven on it in decades. The only evidence was the hole in the wall and Tyler's wrecked cart outside. I called the police. I told them we were exploring. I told them Tyler crashed. I didn't mention the other 2 disappearing in the walls. I didn't mention the black cart. The cops found Sarah and Marcus's cars in a parking lot. They're treating it as a missing persons case, suspecting foul play or a prank gone wrong. They think I'm hiding something. They think we killed them and hid the bodies. But here's the thing. I went back to the warehouse yesterday in the daylight. I climbed through a broken window. I needed to see the wall where Sarah hit. The scorch mark was still there, but when I got closer, I saw it wasn't a burn mark. It was writing, scratched into the concrete, tiny and frantic, hundreds of times over. "One more lap, one more lap, one more lap." And last night, I got a notification on my phone, A Venmo request from Tyler. The amount was $200. The note said re-entry fee. I'm looking at the timestamp. It was sent at 3 a.m. My neighborhood is quiet, but at 3 a.m., just for a second, I swear I heard the high-pitched shriek of a two-stroke engine tearing down my street. I don't think they're dead. I think they're still racing, and I think I'm the only one who didn't qualify for the next round. If you see a link for the circuit on any forums, don't click it. And if you hear an engine that sounds like a scream, don't look in your rearview mirror. Just drive.